At 6:12 in the morning, Archie Bennett jolted awake to the sound of running water behind the bathroom door. By 8 o'clock, he was supposed to greet the new CEO of Monroe Dynamics in the lobby. Being late meant losing his job, but inside this apartment, there was only him and little Bonnie. So who was showering? Archie grabbed a mop handle and crept forward, heart pounding. The door cracked open. Steam billowed out. A calm female voice said, "I'm sorry. I thought this room was arranged for me." Vivian Monroe stepped out, hair wet, and Archie froze. She was the CEO he was supposed to meet this morning, for 3 long seconds. Neither of them moved. Archie stood there in his wrinkled undershirt, clutching a mop like a weapon, staring at a woman worth more than everyone in this building combined. Vivian Monroe, the newly appointed chief executive of Monroe Dynamics, wrapped in a white bathrobe, her composure unbroken despite the absurdity of the situation. Water dripped from her dark hair onto the tile floor. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, calculating the eyes of someone who had navigated boardrooms and hostile negotiations and emerged victorious. His first coherent thought was about Bonnie. She was still asleep in the guest room, just 20 feet away. Whatever this was, accident, mistake, or something far worse, he could not let it touch her. "Stay here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He moved quickly down the hallway, his bare feet silent on the hardwood. He eased open the guest room door and found his 7-year-old daughter curled around a stuffed bear, breathing softly, her hair fanned across the pillow like scattered autumn leaves. He pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders, smoothed it with hands that wanted to tremble but did not. Then he closed the door with the gentleness of a man defusing a bomb. When he returned to the hallway, Vivian had not moved. She stood with her arms crossed, watching him with an expression he could not read. Most people in her position would be panicking, demanding explanations, threatening lawsuits. She did none of these things. She waited. "Your daughter?" she asked. "Yes, Bonnie. She's 7. Then we need to handle this carefully." Vivian pulled her phone from somewhere within the robe's folds and showed him an email. The subject line read, "Executive Accommodation Assignment." The body confirmed that apartment A1706 had been prepared for her arrival, complete with keycard access already registered to her credentials. That was this apartment, the one Archie had been staying in for 3 days because his own unit had a burst pipe that flooded his bedroom and ruined the carpet. Archie felt the floor shift beneath him. "That's impossible. Facilities put me here. I have confirmation." He pulled out his own phone, scrolled through his emails until he found the message from Facilities dated 4 days ago. Temporary relocation to Unit A1706. Duration 5 to 7 business days. Contact building management with any concerns. 2 authorizations, same room, same night. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Not with anger, but with the sharp focus of someone recognizing a pattern she had seen before. "If I was directed here correctly, and you were directed here correctly, then someone wanted us both in the same place at the same time." The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fire not yet visible. Archie's mind raced through possibilities. A clerical error seemed unlikely. Corporate housing assignments went through multiple approval layers. A system glitch was possible but convenient. That left something more deliberate, more calculated. He called the building's security desk. The guard who answered sounded tired, probably near the end of a long overnight shift. "This is Archie Bennett in Unit A1706. I need to verify my accommodation status." Keys clicked on the other end. "Bennett, Archie, temporary assignment to A1706. Approved by Facilities 4 days ago. Status active. And is there anyone else assigned to this unit?" More clicking. A pause. Yes, sir. Vivian Monroe. VIP executive status, assigned to A1706 as of yesterday evening, override authorization from Central Systems. How can two people be assigned to the same unit? The guard's voice became uncertain. The VIP access was processed through executive override. That's above my clearance level. I just see what the system tells me. Archie hung up. His hands were steady, but his mind was spinning. He had worked at Monroe Dynamics for 6 years. He understood systems, protocols, chains of command. Executive overrides did not happen by accident. They required credentials, deliberate intent, and access that most employees, most executives, even never touched. Vivian was already ahead of him. Someone with high-level clearance arranged this. The question is, why? She paused, her gaze moving to the window where early morning light was beginning to filter through the blinds. Who knew you were staying here? Archie thought. Facilities, obviously. Building security. HR has records of temporary relocations, and... He stopped. And Clinton Voss signs off on all operational budget items. Housing relocations would cross his desk. Vivian nodded slowly. Clinton Voss, the man who had been acting CEO for the past 4 months, ever since the founder's retirement. The man who had expected to keep that position until the board announced Vivian Monroe as his replacement. The man who had every reason to want her gone before she could review what he had been doing with his temporary authority, before Archie could pursue that thought. His phone buzzed again. A message from Hillary Boone, Head of Human Resources reminder. 8 a.m. sharp. Lobby. CEO welcome protocol. Professional attire mandatory. No exceptions. He looked at Vivian. She looked back. We have less than 2 hours, she said. Whatever this is, they're expecting chaos. They're expecting panic, accusations, defensive behavior. Let's not give them what they want. They agreed on a simple plan, the kind of plan that only made sense when both parties understood they were walking into an ambush. Archie would take Bonnie to a trusted neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Patterson, on the 14th floor, a retired teacher who had babysat before. Then he would proceed to the lobby as scheduled, acting as though nothing unusual had happened. Vivian would arrive separately, composed, professional, as if this morning had begun exactly as planned. No explanations, no stories, no panic. If someone had set a trap, the worst thing they could do was spring it exactly as designed. Archie dressed quickly while Vivian made use of the guest bathroom. He woke Bonnie gently, told her they were having breakfast with Mrs. Patterson today because Daddy had an early meeting. She accepted this with the easy trust of childhood, rubbing her eyes and asking if she could bring her coloring books. As Archie guided his daughter toward the elevator, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. He noticed something that made him slow his pace without stopping entirely. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway, near the emergency exit door. A man in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, watching. He wore an earpiece, the kind security personnel used. But Archie knew the building's security staff. He had seen them every day for 3 years. This man was not one of them. The man's gaze met Archie's for just a moment. Then he turned and walked through the emergency exit, disappearing before Archie could get a clear look at his face. Vivian had seen it too. She had emerged from the apartment behind them, dressed now in clothes from her suitcase, looking every inch the executive she was. Her expression did not change, but her voice dropped low. They're already watching. We're out of time to wonder if this is coincidence. At 7:58, Archie stepped into the lobby of Monroe Dynamics, with Bonnie safely settled at Mrs. Patterson's apartment and his tie straightened to military precision. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and steel, designed to impress visitors with the company's success and stability. This morning, it felt like an arena. The receptionist looked up, saw him. and her professional smile flickered with something else. Surprise. Uncertainty. The security guards near the entrance exchanged glances that Archie caught from the corner of his eye. Conversations at the coffee station died mid-sentence. He did not understand why until he checked the company's internal chat system on his phone. Someone had posted a message to the general channel, time-stamped 20 minutes ago. The post contained a blurred photograph that showed the hallway outside apartment A1706. In the image, barely distinguishable through the intentional distortion. A man carrying a child stood beside a woman pulling a suitcase. The caption read, "New CEO spotted leaving employee's apartment at dawn. Developing story." The comments beneath had already multiplied into dozens, then hundreds. Speculation, jokes, judgment. A feeding frenzy of corporate gossip moving at the speed of bored employees with smartphones. Archie's stomach dropped, but he kept walking. He had made it halfway across the lobby when Clinton Voss appeared from the executive corridor. Clinton moved like a man who owned every room he entered. His suit was immaculate, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe. His silver hair was perfectly styled. He carried a leather folder embossed with the company logo, and he wore a smile that did not touch his eyes. "Bennett," Clinton said, his voice pitched just loud enough for the gathered employees to hear. "Interesting morning for you. What exactly were you doing in the VIP residence last night?" Every head in the lobby turned. The whispers stopped. Even the security guards went still. Archie forced himself to meet Clinton's gaze. "I was sleeping in the apartment I was assigned to, Mr. Voss. If there's been a scheduling conflict, I'm sure facilities can explain." A scheduling conflict. Clinton repeated the words as though tasting something unpleasant. "Is that what we're calling it?" Before Archie could respond, Hillary Boone appeared at his side. She was a tall woman with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, and she held a tablet displaying what looked like an official document. "Mr. Bennett, there's been a formal report filed regarding unauthorized access to executive housing. I need you to come with me for a statement." This was how they would destroy him, Archie realized. Not with evidence, they had none, but with implication, process. The weight of bureaucracy grinding down on a man who could not afford lawyers or scandals. A photograph, a rumor, a formal investigation that assumed guilt until proven otherwise. Then Vivian Monroe walked through the front doors. She moved with the kind of authority that made people step aside without being asked. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a steady rhythm. Her posture was perfect. Her expression controlled. Her presence commanding attention without demanding it. She swept her gaze across the lobby, took in the frozen tableau, Clinton's predatory smile, Hillary's uncomfortable formality, Archie's isolation, and settled her attention on the man who clearly expected to control this moment. "Good morning," she said. "I see we're already busy." Clinton recovered quickly, his smile reshaping itself into something that resembled welcome. "Ms. Monroe, on behalf of Monroe Dynamics, welcome to your first day. I trust your accommodations were satisfactory." Interesting choice of words. Vivian turned to Hillary, her voice carrying the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Before any disciplinary process begins, I want full access to the building's entry logs, the accommodation assignment system, and all security camera footage from last night. As CEO, that falls within my authority." "Correct?" Hillary blinked rapidly. Yes, technically, but standard procedure would suggest..." "Standard procedure is what I say it is. Let's start with the data." Silas Ward appeared as if summoned from the shadows. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the particular confidence of someone who had spent decades bending rules and language to serve his purposes. He carried a document that looked freshly printed, the paper still warm. "Ms. Monroe, With respect, we have established protocols for situations involving potential ethics violations. A formal review has been initiated according to company policy. Until that review is complete, it would be inappropriate, perhaps even legally compromising, to access raw security data without proper oversight. Vivian took the document from his hands. She scanned it in silence, her eyes moving methodically across the page. When she looked up, her expression had not changed, but something in her gaze had sharpened. This report references a Facilities Access Override Code, Section 3, Paragraph 2. She held up the page. Why would a legal ethics document include technical system data from the housing department? Silas did not answer immediately. His smile remained fixed, but something behind it shifted. "I'll ask again," Vivian said. "Why does the legal department have access to facilities override codes? That's not standard procedure. That's not even within your departmental scope." The lobby had gone completely silent. Archie watched Silas's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly, watched Clinton's carefully constructed smile flicker for just a moment, and understood something important. They had planned for panic. They had planned for denial, for accusations, for emotional outbursts that would make Vivian look unstable and Archie look guilty. They had not planned for this. They had not planned for calm. They had not planned for questions. "Mr. Bennett stays on duty," Vivian announced, her voice carrying across the lobby. "No disciplinary action will be taken until we have verified data from source systems. I'm ordering a full audit of executive access privileges to be completed by end of business today." She looked directly at Clinton. "Any objections should be submitted in writing to the board of directors." She walked past him without another word, heading for the elevators. After a moment's hesitation, Archie followed. He felt the weight of 100 stares on his back, heard the whispers starting up again behind him, but he did not look back. In the elevator, neither of them spoke until the doors closed and the car began its ascent. "Thank you," Archie said quietly. "Don't thank me yet." Vivian pressed the button for the executive floor. "Someone went to considerable trouble to make this look compromising. That means they're scared of something I might find. We need to find it first." The rest of the morning was controlled chaos. The internal chat system exploded with speculation that ranged from curious to cruel. Anonymous accounts multiplied, posting variations of the photograph from different angles, adding captions that grew more salacious with each iteration. Someone leaked a version to an external gossip site that specialized in corporate scandals, complete with breathless speculation about the new CEO's first day. By noon, the story had a life of its own. Archie sat in a glass-walled conference room on the operations floor, watching his career dissolve in real time. Every few minutes, someone would walk past and pretend not to look at him through the transparent walls. Their expressions ranged from pity to contempt to morbid curiosity. He thought about Bonnie, about what she would hear at school when this filtered down through parent networks and playground gossip, about the looks she would get from other children who had heard their parents talking. He thought about his wife, Elena, gone 3 years now, and how hard he had worked since her death to build something stable, something safe, something that would let their daughter grow up without fear. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number signed the admission document. "Keep your daughter out of this. We can make this very public, or we can make it disappear. Your choice." He stared at the message for a long time. Finn Mercer found him there an hour later. Finn was Archie's closest friend at the company, a systems engineer who had spent 15 years building his expertise in server architecture, access protocols, and the invisible digital infrastructure that kept Monroe Dynamics running. He was a heavy-set man with a perpetually rumpled appearance and the kind of mind that saw patterns where others saw chaos. Finn closed the conference room door and checked the hallway before speaking. I found something. Something they didn't want anyone to find. Archie looked up. Tell me. The access override that let Monroe into your apartment. It was executed at 2:11 a.m. Not through normal channels, not through facilities, not through travel coordination, not through any of the standard systems. Finn pulled out his tablet, swiped to a screen filled with code and timestamps. The authorization signature traces back to a legal department credential. Specifically, to a signature block that's only used for executive-level legal documents. Archie processed this. Silas Ward. Maybe. The credential is associated with his department, but I can't prove it was him personally. Not yet. Finn swiped to another screen. But here's where it gets interesting. The same credential signature, the exact same digital fingerprint appears on a maintenance command that disabled the hallway cameras for exactly 3 minutes. Starting at 2:08 a.m., 3 minutes before Monroe arrived at the building. 3 minutes of darkness. Enough time for her to enter, get to the elevator, reach the 17th floor, and enter the apartment, all without being recorded. Finn lowered his voice. This wasn't an accident. Archie, this wasn't a system glitch. Someone planned this. Someone with high-level access, detailed knowledge of security systems, and a reason to want both of you compromised. Archie wanted to act immediately to confront Clinton, to demand answers, to prove his innocence through sheer force of will. But Vivian had been clear during their brief conversation in the elevator. No cowboy moves. Everything had to be documented, verified, and presented through proper channels. If they made even one mistake, Clinton's lawyers would bury them in procedure and process until the truth no longer mattered. That night, Archie picked up Bonnie from Mrs. Patterson's apartment and walked her home through corridors that felt different now. Hostile. Watched. He made dinner macaroni and cheese, her favorite, and tried to keep his voice light as she chattered about her coloring books and the cat video Mrs. Patterson had shown her. But children sense more than adults give them credit for, and Bonnie grew quiet as the meal progressed. Finally, she set down her fork. Daddy, did you do something wrong? The other kids said things. Archie felt his heart crack. What did they say? Sweetheart? They said you were in trouble. They said people at your work are mad at you. He knelt beside her chair, taking her small hands in his. No, Bonnie, I didn't do anything wrong. But someone is telling lies about Daddy, and I have to prove their lies. Do you understand? Why would someone lie about you? Because sometimes, when people want power, they hurt others to get it. They don't care who gets hurt, as long as they get what they want. Bonnie was quiet for a long moment, her face scrunched in thought. Then she said something that would echo in Archie's mind for days afterward. If you didn't do anything wrong, you should tell the truth. You always tell me to tell the truth, even when it's hard. Archie hugged her tight, not trusting his voice to respond. Later, after Bonnie was asleep, he stood at the window of the living room and looked out at the city lights. His phone buzzed. Vivian. I got a threat, he said without preamble. Anonymous, telling me to sign an admission document or they'll make things worse. I'm not surprised. Her voice was calm, controlled, but he could hear the steel beneath it. They're escalating because they know the data doesn't support their narrative. Finn briefed me an hour ago. I won't sign anything, but I can't let this touch Bonnie. She's already hearing things at school. Then we end this fast. I've ordered a full system audit. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling an emergency board meeting. Henry Lowell will chair. We present the evidence, we present the timeline, and we let the facts speak. Clinton will fight. He'll have Silas spinning narratives, challenging every piece of data. Clinton will lose. Vivian's voice carried absolute certainty. He just doesn't know it yet. The next morning, Archie walked into Monroe Dynamics feeling like a man approaching Judgment Day. But he walked with his head up and his shoulders back, because his daughter had told him to tell the truth, and that was what he intended to do. The emergency board meeting convened at 10 a.m. in the executive conference room on the top floor. The room was designed to intimidate floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A massive mahogany table that could seat 20. Oil paintings of company founders watching from the walls. Henry Lowell, chairman of the board, sat at the head of the table. He was 73 years old, with white hair and the weathered face of a man who had built and lost and rebuilt fortunes over 5 decades. His expression betrayed nothing. He was known throughout the business world as someone who cared nothing for emotion, politics, or personal loyalty. He cared only for evidence and logic. When Henry Lowell made a decision, it was final. Clinton Voss sat to his right, as confident and assured as ever. His suit was fresh, his posture relaxed, his smile firmly in place. Beside him, Silas Ward had arranged a stack of documents like ammunition waiting to be deployed. Hilary Boone sat near the door, looking deeply uncomfortable, caught between procedure and something that was beginning to look like conscience. Finn Mercer stood at the presentation screen, a USB drive in his hand and weeks of meticulous research behind him. Vivian opened the proceedings. 48 hours ago, I arrived at Monroe Dynamics to assume my role as CEO. Within 6 hours, I was the subject of an internal scandal designed to undermine my authority and destroy the reputation of an innocent employee. The timing was not coincidental. The execution was not accidental. Today, we examine the evidence and determine accountability. Clinton leaned forward, his voice dripping with reasonable concern. Ms. Monroe, with respect, this is highly irregular. Board meetings are not courtrooms. We have established procedures for internal disputes. This isn't a dispute, Vivian said. This is sabotage. Henry Lowell raised one hand, silencing both of them. Procedures exist to serve truth, not obstruct it. Present your evidence, Ms. Monroe. Finn stepped forward and connected his laptop to the display. The screen filled with timestamps, access logs, digital signatures, the invisible architecture of corporate systems laid bare. At 2:11 a.m. 2 days ago, an executive override was executed in the housing assignment system. This override reassigned Apartment A1706, already occupied by Mr. Bennett, under temporary relocation to incoming CEO Vivian Monroe. Finn highlighted a line of code. The authorization came from a legal department credential, not facilities, not travel coordination. Legal. Silas interrupted smoothly. Credentials can be compromised. Digital signatures can be spoofed. This proves nothing about intent or responsibility. Then explain this. Finn switched to another screen. At 2:08 a.m., 3 minutes before the housing override, a maintenance command was executed against the security camera system. This command disabled recording on the 17th floor for exactly 3 minutes. He highlighted another line. The digital signature on this command is identical to the signature on the housing override. Same credential, same source, same intent. The room was silent. And where did these commands originate? Vivian asked. Finn pulled up a network diagram. Both commands were executed from a terminal on the executive floor. The IP address traces to a workstation in the suite assigned to the chief operating officer. Clinton's expression flickered. It was quick, a momentary crack in the facade, but Archie caught it. So did Henry Lowell. The chairman turned his cold gaze on Clinton. Mr. Voss, do you have an explanation? This is absurd, Clinton said, recovering his composure. Anyone could have accessed that terminal. Cleaning staff, security personnel, any number of people move through executive offices after hours. This is a witch hunt orchestrated by a new CEO who feels threatened by existing leadership. You feel threatened. Vivian's voice was ice. You've been acting CEO for 4 months. During that time, you've approved 17 contracts that I've flagged for financial review. 3 of those contracts involve vendors with no verified credentials and payment terms that border on embezzlement. She stood and placed her hands on the table. You have every reason to want me gone before I can examine what you've been doing with this company's resources. The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Archie spoke for the first time. There was a man in the hallway that night. Security detail. He was watching when I left with my daughter. He wasn't building security, I know those people. He was someone else. Finn nodded, pulling up another document. I checked the security rotation schedules. That guard identified as Marcus Webb wasn't assigned to residential floors that night. He was transferred there by special request. Finn paused. The request originated from Mr. Voss's office. Henry's eyes narrowed. You moved security personnel to the residential floor without standard authorization. Clinton's composure cracked further. I was concerned about there were reports of I was simply ensuring what? Vivian pressed. How did you know there was anything to ensure the transfer request was submitted hours before I arrived, unless you knew exactly what was going to happen? Clinton stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with an ugly sound. I don't have to sit here and be interrogated. This entire proceeding is a farce. A vendetta by a CEO who hasn't been in this building for 48 hours. Henry Lowell's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Sit down, Mr. Voss. It was not a request. Clinton hesitated, his face flushed with anger. Then, slowly, he lowered himself back into his chair. Henry continued, his voice measured but implacable. Based on the evidence presented, I am ordering the following actions. 1. Clinton Voss is suspended from all executive duties pending a full investigation by external counsel. 2. Silas Ward's access credentials are revoked immediately, and he will be placed on administrative leave pending review of his department's involvement. 3. All contracts approved during the interim leadership period will be subjected to independent financial audit. Silas made one last attempt. Chairman Lowell, I must advise that acting precipitously could expose the company to significant litigation. The company's exposure, Henry said, is the direct result of actions taken by individuals in this room, not by this board. He turned to Hilary Boone. Ms. Boone, please ensure that all internal communications regarding Mr. Bennett are corrected immediately. The accusations against him were baseless and will be formally retracted. Hilary nodded, something like relief crossing her face. Yes, Chairman. I'll prepare a statement today. Henry stood, signaling the end of the meeting. This company was built on integrity. It will not be destroyed by those who have forgotten that. After the boardroom emptied, Archie found himself standing alone by the windows, looking out at a city that suddenly seemed less threatening. Vivian appeared beside him. You held up well, she said. I had help. He turned to face her. You could have distanced yourself, made it easier politically, thrown me under the bus and started fresh. That's not leadership, that's survival. She paused. Archie, you showed me something in there. You understand how systems work, how pressure points connect, how to stay calm when everything is designed to make you panic. I need people like that on my team, not buried in middle management running logistics. He blinked. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you the job you should have had years ago. Operations strategy, direct report to the CEO's office. She extended her hand. If you're interested. He looked at her hand, then at her face. He thought about Bonnie, about stability, about a future that had seemed impossible just 24 hours ago. He took her hand. I'm interested. 3 weeks later, the corporate world had largely moved on. Clinton Voss resigned ahead of formal termination. his severance contingent on cooperation with ongoing legal proceedings. Silas Ward faced disbarment hearings for his role in the conspiracy. The 17 contracts Clinton had approved were being unwound by forensic accountants who had already identified significant financial irregularities. Archie moved into his new office on the strategy floor. It had windows that overlooked the park across the street. Bonnie had visited twice, declaring it acceptable but noting it needed more plants and perhaps a fish tank. The internal chat system had new moderators now. Anonymous posting was restricted. The photograph had been scrubbed from servers and memories alike, replaced by the official narrative of a new CEO who had survived her first corporate crisis with decisive leadership. Vivian implemented new security protocols throughout the company. Two-factor authentication for all executive access, mandatory logging of system commands, independent oversight of interdepartmental credential sharing. She announced the changes at a company-wide meeting, framing them not as a response to scandal but as an investment in trust and transparency. The whispers faded. People moved on to new gossip, new concerns, new dramas. That was the nature of corporate life. Attention was a currency that depreciated quickly, but some things endured. One evening, Vivian stopped by Archie's office as the sun was setting over the city. Most of the floor had gone home, leaving behind the particular silence of corporate spaces after hours. "How's Bonnie?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Better every day. Kids are resilient." He smiled. "She asked about you, actually." "Oh. She wanted to know if you were nice. I told her I thought so." Vivian almost laughed a real laugh, genuine and unguarded, so different from the controlled expressions she wore in public. "That's a generous assessment, given how we met." "It's an accurate one." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights begin to flicker on against the darkening sky. "This doesn't have to be complicated," Vivian said finally. "What happened? What we went through, it built something between us. Trust, respect, mutual understanding. That's rare, especially in environments like this." "I know. I don't want to risk that. Not for some fleeting connection. And not for either of our careers." Archie nodded slowly. "Neither do I. But I also don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. So what do we do?" He thought about Bonnie, about professionalism, about the weight of perception in a company that had just survived a scandal built on implication and rumor. "One step at a time," he said. "Coffee after work, conversations about responsibility, strategy, what it means to lead people who depend on us. We let it grow at its own pace, without forcing anything." Vivian considered this, then nodded slowly. "I can work with that." The following Saturday, she came to Archie's apartment. She knocked properly this time, standing in the hallway like any normal visitor, waiting to be invited in. Bonnie opened the door. She looked up at the tall, elegant woman with curious 7-year-old eyes that missed nothing. "Are you going to use our shower again?" the girl asked. Vivian laughed, really laughed, warm and unguarded and utterly unexecutive. "No, sweetheart. From now on, I only walk through doors the right way." Bonnie considered this with the gravity of a child passing judgment on the adult world. Then she nodded solemnly. "Good. Do you want to see my drawings? I made a new one of a rainbow fish." Vivian glanced at Archie, who was standing behind his daughter with an expression somewhere between amusement and wonder. "I would love to see your rainbow fish," Vivian said. They spent the afternoon together, simple things that felt extraordinary after weeks of crisis. Crayons scattered across the coffee table, stories about school friends with complicated 7-year-old dramas, a meal that Archie cooked while Vivian and Bonnie engaged in a heated debate about the proper names for stuffed animals, laughter that echoed through rooms that had known too much silence. Later, after Bonnie had fallen asleep clutching her stuffed bear. Archie walked Vivian to the door. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for today, for everything. Thank you for letting me in." She paused at the threshold. "Not just today. Back then, when you had every reason to shut everyone out. You believed me when no one else had reason to. I believed the evidence, but more than that." She met his eyes. "I believed in who you were under pressure. You didn't break. You didn't compromise. You held onto your integrity even when it would have been easier to let go. That's not something you can fake. Neither is what you did. You put yourself on the line for someone you just met. I put myself on the line for the truth. You happened to be standing in its way." They looked at each other in the soft light of the hallway. Two people who had found something unexpected in the wreckage of someone else's scheme. "Good night, Archie." "Good night, Vivian." She walked to the elevator. He watched until the doors closed, then turned back to his apartment, the same apartment where everything had started, where a twist of fate and malice had thrown two strangers together in the most improbable circumstances. The door that had once been breached by deception now opened only to trust. Archie checked on Bonnie one last time, adjusted her blanket, and whispered goodnight. Then he sat in the quiet living room, surrounded by evidence of an ordinary life that had nearly been destroyed, and thought about everything that had happened. He had been targeted because he was vulnerable, a single father, a man without power or connections or resources to fight back. They had assumed he would crumble, sign whatever they put in front of him, disappear quietly into the wreckage of his own reputation. They had underestimated him. They had underestimated what a man would do to protect his child, his honor, his truth. And they had underestimated Vivian Monroe, a leader who understood that protecting the innocent was not a weakness, but a strength. A woman who had walked into an ambush on her first day and refused to sacrifice anyone to save herself. In the end, the trap had caught only those who set it. Archie smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow, there would be work, strategy meetings, operational challenges, the endless complexity of running a company that served thousands of people and families like his own. But tonight, there was peace. The mystery woman in his shower had turned out to be exactly who he needed her to be. Not a scandal, not a threat, not a weapon in someone else's war. A partner. And that made all the difference.